Alright, this is Chapter 7, which is Midnight Shift. Well, I cannot see any sign of danger coming, Tom said, looking out from the castle's battlements. To the west, the ocean was transformed into a golden mantle by the setting sun. To the east, twilight was sinking over the forest, and the trees were silhouetted black against the fading sky. Unless it's that spry kid poking and prying into every corner of the castle. I've caught him in half a dozen places he shouldn't be. Jack Spry is just finding his way around, Quinn answered. He's had a hard life, I think. Perhaps he's had to learn how to check out a new place he's in. To be sure, he has an escape route. He asks a lot of questions, too, Tom said. He's been following me around, pestering me, to know everything there is to know about the castle. Why does he do that? You ask a lot of questions, too, Quinn grinned. Her wild black curls blew away from her face. Smell that wind. I wonder where that has been and what it has seen. The wind hasn't seen anything. She looked at him sideways. How do you know? It has no eyes, Tom answered impatiently. Do you need eyes to see, and do you need eyes to hear? I think being apprenticed to the witch has been very bad to you, Tom replied. Quinn only smiled. I need to get back to the kitchen, else Ma'am will be after me, Tom sighed. Come on, Fergus. The wolfhound stood up, stretching and yawning and showing a mouth full of sharp teeth. Quinn ruffled the wolfhound's ears. All right, I'll stand guard now, but you need to be back before midnight. I'll do my best. No, you must come back in time. It's the night of the dark moon, and the Grand Teller needs my help in the rituals. I'm sure she can manage to carry her own bag of rocks, Tom replied, and dodged Quinn's swift punch. All right, I get the message. I'll be back by midnight. Tom waved goodbye and ran down the steps, taking them two at a time. Bring me back something to eat, Quinn called after him. When Tom came back at midnight, and some bread and cheese for Tom, it was hard to find a fog. It was to find a fog creeping from the north. It swirled down from the mountain, shrouding the roofs of the town. It's strange, Quinn said, rubbing her bare arms. It's turned so cold. Tom brought up a blanket to sit on, and he tossed it to her. She wrapped it around herself and stood staring to the north. Nothing could be seen of the stars now, only pale drifts of mist. What is the dark one that goes over the earth, swallows water and wood, but is afraid of the wind? She asked, so low that Tom could barely hear. What? What's the answer? Tom demanded. Quinn swirled one hand in the air, raising a tiny breeze which caused the mist to eddy and swirl. Ah, he said, now I get it. You mean the mist. He got it. It's old Mutton Head growing some brains at last, Quinn mocked. The castle bells began to toll at the midnight hour. The sound was strangely muffled. I've got to go, said Quinn, eating last of her bread. Everyone will be looking for me. I'm not sure there's any point standing guard in the fog, Tom said. Besides, it's been 3 weeks already, and I'm sick of keeping watch half the night. M's cross with me for practically falling asleep with my head in the stew. The Grand Teller is unhappy with me, too, Quinn answers. She keeps asking me where I'm slipping off to all the time. Maybe the wild man's warning was hogwash, Tom said. After 3 weeks, it was hard to remember the urgency of the wild man's words and the firm grip of his fingers. Tom could only think how tired he was after days of trying to keep watch as well as do his chores. While nothing unusual happened, he thought longingly of his soft, warm bed by the fire in the kitchen. What about the tellstones? Urged Quinn. In the Grand Teller's vision? Maybe they're warnings of things coming in years, Tom said. It could be long way off, and we're wearing ourselves out in the meantime. Perhaps we're better off getting some sleep so that we're alert and ready for anything that comes. If it ever does, he thought to himself. Quinn stared into the darkness. I don't know, she answered softly. I don't like this fog. It feels wrong. It smells wrong. Then Fergus growled deep in his throat. What is it, boy? Tom asked. The wolfhound's growl deepened into a snarl. He put both paws up into the battlement, sniffing the wind. Then he barked a warning. Tom looked all around, but it was pitch black and and impossible to see a thing. The distant rattle and creak made him spin to look down into the inner ward. A gust of wind carried a strange smell, like marsh gas, and swirled the mist away. He saw a dark hooded figure draping open the ward gate. It was so heavy that the figure had to heave and drag it with all their strength. An immense black key jutted from the keyhole. As soon as the gate was open, a strange, dark, bony thing crept through. Tom leaned forward, watching in horror. Quinn gasped and gripped at the battlement beside him. The figure scuttled across the courtyard, slithered through doorways, and leapt up steps. They were thin and bent, like long-legged insects with empty eye sockets. Each carried a spear in one hand and was preceded by a swirl of dank-smelling mist. The only sound was a soft slap of their bare feet on the stone. Quickly, cries of alarms and shouts of terror broke out. Castle guards ran to grapple the invaders, who fought silently, stabbing with their spears. Still more of them came through the mist, rank after rank of them, eyeless and fleshless and noiseless. It was eerie and frightening. Then guards on great horses rode through the open gateway, helmets pulled down to their faces. Even the horses' faces and bodies were covered with armor, while their hoofs were ghostly quiet. The helmet of the leader had two up-curving forks. "Who are they?" Quinn cried. "Look, there are hundreds of them." "Come on," Tom cried. "We have to sound the alarm." Tom ran along the battlement, shouting and waving at the top of his voice. "Beware! Beware! Wake up! Invaders in the castle! Wake up!" Fergus loped beside him, barking. Quinn ran the other way, shouting too, but their voices were lost in the mist. Tom ran for the bell tower. He raced through an archway and seized hold of the bell ropes, yanking them with all his strength. The bells rang out. Tom kept pulling the ropes until his arms ached so fiercely he could not pull any more. Then Quinn was beside him, taking over. The cacophony of the bells filled Tom's head, making his senses swim. His palms stung fiercely. At last, panting, Quinn had to stop too. "The Grand Teller! I have to warn the Grand Teller!" she cried. "Ma'am!" Both ran as fast as they could along the battlements, the wolfhound swift at their heels. They reached the ladies' tower and half fell down the steps into the keep. As they ran along the corridor, they saw a swirl of dark mist, and then smelled that strangely marshly scent. Then they heard a girl scream. "Lady Elanor!" Tom cried. Tom and Quinn ran to her room. Elanor was backed up against the paneling, wildly swinging at a poker. She was dressed only in a chemise, her golden brown hair tied in a long braid, her feet bare. Facing her was a crowd of terrifyingly smiling creatures. They seemed to be made of ancient leather, wrapped tightly over bone. They looked at Tom with their empty eye sockets, nostrils flaring. They caught his scent and leapt towards him, raking the air with their nails. Fergus leapt past Tom with a snarl. He knocked down one of the leathery creatures and then sought to stab him with its spear. Fergus seized it in his jaws and pulled. The two had tug of war until suddenly the leather man let go, falling backwards. Meanwhile, Tom managed to grab a jug of flowers from the table and hurl it at another. It hit the target in the fence and crashed to the floor, giving Tom and Quinn time to rush where Elanor stood, waving the poker around. "Quickly, through the secret door!" Tom gasped. "Where is the key?" Elanor darted across to where her clothes were folded over a chair, her golden slippers laid out neatly below. She grabbed them and pulled the key out of the pocket of her dress, tossing it to Tom. Fergus was rolling on the floor with another of the leathery creatures, snarling and biting and clawing. Quinn was holding off the rest with a poker, using it a lot more forcefully than Elanor had. Tom unlocked the secret door and Elanor scrambled through, her dress and shoes in her arm. Tom and Quinn were quick to follow. Then Tom whistled for the wolfhound. Fergus leapt through the tiny door and Tom slammed it shut and locked it seconds before the leather man reached it. They heard a nerve-shredding scrape of nails against the wood and turned and ran. Down the spiral steps they hurtled, crashing into the walls in the darkness. Somewhere above them, Tom heard the creak and splinter of breaking wood, then a swift slap, slap, slap of leathery feet. "Run!" he cried. And that is the end of chapter 7. So I will see you guys tomorrow.